Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you this evening. I am joined by House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, who is the #2 ranking leader in the Democratic House. And we are very excited to have him here today. Thank you for submitting all of your questions via Facebook. And I'm so grateful that Congressman Hoyer has agreed to take a few minutes to answer them. Thank you for being here. So one of the questions that I'm getting a lot from constituents and was submitted for you this evening is about the HEROES Act and the desperate need that we have in particular for state and local government relief. We are really struggling in New York. We are really struggling in central New York in particular. And the HEROES Act was supposed to bring almost $1 billion in relief for our congressional districts' governments. As we know, Congressman Katko voted against that bill. We're hoping to see some package like that come. And I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what you think the key provisions in a good relief package would be.
Well, first of all, Dana, thank you for the question. Also, thank you very much for running for the values that I think people voted for in 2018 to reinstate, and we pursued. But we need to make sure that we, in the next Congress, make sure that we pass those bills and send them to the president. We haven't done that yet. McConnell's been holding most of those bills to the detriment of, I think, the American people. We spent literally hundreds of hours over a number of weeks. When we weren't in the Congress, we were on the phone or we were in a Zoom room together, talking about how do we confront both the health and economic needs of the country and of our people. And we talked to all sorts of experts, liberal, conservative, Republicans, Democrats, governors, local officials, county commissioners, county council people, mayors. We talked to a broad range of people, talked to doctors, talked to hospital administrators, talked to Dr. Fauci, talked to other experts. And we came up with what we thought would be, first of all, we came up with 4 bills, our initiative, sat down with Treasury Mnuchin, Nancy Pelosi, essentially the two of them, but Nancy took what our committees thought was needed, what our members thought was needed, what their constituents thought were needed. And we put together 4 bills. Well, I'm talking about the HEROES, but prior to that, we put together 4 bills. They passed in a bipartisan fashion, appropriating and putting over $3 trillion, just about $3 trillion on the table. Every economist said, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, that was necessary because we've never, ever confronted a crisis of this magnitude to the health of our people, to the health of our country, to the health of our economy. What we did was in those 4 bills, on a bipartisan fashion, put a floor, give assistance to give help to individuals, to the medical community for testing and other medical needs, and we gave help to businesses. It had a very positive effect, or we would have fallen, frankly, through the floorboards. We knew there was another bill necessary. That hundreds of hours of discussion proved it was necessary. And we dealt with 3 things: state, local, municipal, county governments. Why? Because they're on the front line. And they're hiring people on the front lines. And to this point in time, they've laid off 1 million people. Now, frankly, you're going to pay them one way or the other. You're either going to pay them on unemployment insurance and keep them at a level that they can do, or frankly, you're going to pay for them on welfare payments, on food stamp payments, on housing assistance payments. You know, you're kidding yourself when you say we're not going to invest in keeping people employed. Because if they're not employed, they're going to need help, and we're not going to let them starve. Hopefully. That's our value. We're not going to let people starve. So Cuomo and my governor, Larry Hogan, Republican governor, said the states needed $500 million. Excuse me, $500 billion, $500 billion, which, given the loss of revenues that was caused by COVID-19, we thought they needed, because we didn't want to see them lay off teachers or police or fire or sanitation workers or the hundreds of workers who do different things that keep our communities safe and working. When we passed that bill, what did Mitch McConnell say? Let the states go bankrupt. What kind of a response is that? What kind of value is that? And if the states went bankrupt, very frankly, the economy would implode. There would be, and not enough money in the world to keep it going. Mm-hmm. So I think the HEROES bill states. Then we dealt with the medical community, testing and tracing in particular, $75 billion. And we dealt with making sure that FMAP, the Medicaid dollars, were upped, because the strain on the medical system has been so high, it also is reducing the ability of the states to respond. And local governments, some of whom have county hospitals. I need to bring this answer to close. And then we lastly dealt with small businesses and individuals and families and children in terms of nutritional programs and educational programs. Yes, we need to get kids back to school, but however we get them back to school, whether we get them back in person, whether we get them back in a hybrid way, some in person, some virtually, or we get them back all virtually, it's going to cost more money. Mm-hmm. And the states, because they're hemorrhaging revenue, and the counties hemorrhaging revenue, in my state, the counties largely fund education, but the state is a big partner as well. So we think the HEROES bill is absolutely essential. Are we prepared to, life's about compromise when you're in, democracy is about compromise. Are we going to have to come down some, but what we won't do is sell out absolute needs. Yes, we need to pass unemployment. That's all the administration wanted to do. We need to do that. We're for that. But to pretend that you take care of unemployment and don't take care of housing, don't take care of childcare, don't take care of education, don't take care of health workers and testing, you're kidding yourself. And you let the states go bankrupt, as McConnell said, you will not have much, unemployment will be somewhat irrelevant. There will be no employment.
Right. Yeah, I think that all of those things that you mentioned are so critical to helping people survive this crisis. And it's why it is shocking to me that John Katko voted against that bill. It is, I think that's unconscionable when people are suffering so much.
I think you ought to talk to every Republican mayor, commissioner, small or large town mayors, Syracuse, who may have a Democratic mayor, but talk to every Republican municipal official who sees their revenue declining and knowing they're going to have to lay off critically important people.
Yes, I've been hearing from them, and our mayor in Syracuse is an independent, and he commented in the press that he was very disappointed in the congressman's vote. This should not be a partisan issue. It should be about helping people. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, which I think is related to the relief issue in some extent that we've gotten several questions about, is the Postal Service and the need to support and now defend the Postal Service because we have a critical election coming up that's going to be done largely by mail, but also because the current efforts to slow down the Postal Service are having life and death effects on, for example, people who order medications through the mail. And we have a lot of concern in our community about what's happening to the Postal Service. And some voters would like to know, what can we as Democrats do to support and strengthen the Postal Service in the face of these attacks?
Well, of course, what we could do is elect more people who support the Postal Service. This president has been hostile to the Postal Service. The irony is the Trump International Hotel is in the former postal facility in Washington, D.C., a historic building. So it's so ironic that he's making money off of a postal building. That's another issue, by the way, as we all know, on emoluments. But that aside, Mr. Meadows is hostile to the Postal Department as well, which is a shame.
Mm.
Ironically, now ought to be a time when we are supporting the Postal Service that brings our country together, connects our country, makes it possible for people to get merchandise and letters and from relatives or checks that they need. Social Security, you mentioned some things, but obviously prescription drugs, critically important, but so is that Social Security check, so is that veterans benefit, so is that disability benefit in the mail.
Right.
And the Postal Service needs that money. Who says so? Every Trump appointed postmaster, member of the board of on the Postal Service, every one of them says we need that 25 billion. Now that we have a new postmaster who's a big contributor to Donald Trump, that's his connection to the Postal Department. And he's coming in and saying, we're going to slow down, no overtime, and that check doesn't get there. That prescription drug doesn't get there in that envelope. It is irresponsible and ironic, as I said at the beginning, that an institution which connects us at a time when we are disconnected because of health reasons needs to be strengthened and supported. And another thing, and Dana, this is the perverse part of this. More Americans than ever want to vote at home and put that vote in the mail. And they want to be confident that that envelope containing their voice is heard and counted.
Right.
So we ought to be supporting. And Nancy Pelosi is telling Mnuchin pretty directly, we need that money for the Postal Department.
Good.
Can we, again, compromise? Can we compromise? We say 25 billion over 3 years. Could we do a lesser sum for a shorter time? Yes, but that'll keep the Postal Department operating and with integrity.
Right.
This Postmaster General ordering them to slow down the mail, very frankly, and this is a serious charge, I know, impeding the flow of the United States mail is a crime.
Well, I'm grateful to know that you all are fighting for that support, because so many, particularly in a district like ours, where so much of it is rural, good postal service, timely postal service is a critically important service. So thank you for fighting for that. I do want to ask you one more question, and that is about prescription drugs, which is such an important issue for so many people, and the cost of drugs is out of control. I talked to a gentleman at an event we had earlier this year who'd lost his mother to diabetes because she couldn't afford her insulin. This is a life and death matter for people. And I was so proud when the House passed H.R. 3, which I think is a phenomenal bill to address the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs, because not only does it have Medicare negotiating drug prices, but it also pegs our drug prices to what they're being sold for in other comparable countries, so that manufacturers can't price gouge Americans, which is great. Not surprisingly, my opponent, John Katko, has voted against that bill and insists that the Republican bill that he is supporting is a better option. I believe it's HR 19.
19, yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, I have argued that that bill is not actually going to solve the problem. And I was wondering if you could just talk to our voters a little bit about what the differences are in the approach between these two bills and why HR 3 will address the problem and HR 19 won't.
Okay, well, great question. I'm not surprised that Katko is saying I was for HR 19. HR 19 was a message bill. It may have, in some instances, brought drug prices down slightly, but not significantly. Now, first of all, let me say something. Uh, Under the present structure that we have, is that almost every country in the world keeps drug prices low, so people can have life-saving, life-sustaining, uh, condition ameliorating pharmaceuticals.
Mhm.
And it's not an option for them. It's life and death. So this is not a commodity you can say, oh, well, if they can't afford it, they just don't have to buy it. If they don't buy it, they die, or they get very sick, or they don't stay well. So in the For the People agenda that we had last year, what did we say? We said we wanted to bring healthcare costs down. A very significant increase in the cost of medical care today is because we have some extraordinary pharmaceuticals. God bless them. They're miracle drugs in many ways. But if you can't get them, if you can't afford them. Now, what does the rest of the world say to the pharmaceutical company? You can sell your drug here, but this is the price. All over the world, they do that. So in America, we are paying the research dollars for the entire world. That doesn't seem fair to me and doesn't seem fair to my constituents.
Right.
Now, but I don't try to make the pharmaceuticals bad guys. They're playing by the rules, and we refuse to put the rules in place which will help our people. So on cost, let me just say, on the Affordable Care Act, we passed a bill, it's sitting in the Senate. We passed two bills, as a matter of fact, which would bring not only drug costs down, but would protect pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
They're in court trying to make that unconstitutional.
Right.
They being the Republicans. They talk about, I'm sure Mr. Katko says, oh yeah, I want to bring down prescription drug prices. But if you can't get insurance, you escalate the price. Secondly, what was the difference between HR 3 and HR 19? We said you've got to negotiate. And Medicare is the largest purchaser. So we have some market power. Now we have to have fair prices. But we, you know, how do you tell a constituent that lives in your district, you know, your sister who lives in Toronto pays 50 cents for this pill, one pill, and you pay $5 for this pill. You know, the constituent looks at it and says, why is that? It's the same pill. It's the same manufacturer. It comes almost it may come in the same bottle. I mean, not the same bottle, but the same looking bottle. So HR 3 was a real bill. HR 19 was a message bill to pretend that we were bringing prices down. Ironically, guess who supports keying it to foreign international prices?
Who?
Donald Trump. Donald Trump says we ought to take an average cost. That's what we put in our bill. And Donald Trump said he supported that. Unfortunately, the Republicans in the Congress of the United States Senate didn't.
Don't. Right. It's interesting that you
when
said
when you're there, we're going to have the votes to do it, and we're going to have the Senate to do it, and we're going to have a president who will sign the bill.
That's right. And we're going to make real change in people's lives.
Yep.
It's interesting to me that you say that the difference between them is that one is sort of an empty messaging piece of rhetoric and one is a substantive.
It says good things. It doesn't do good things.
Right.
It does some things that you and I could support. And what we would say to them, well, that's fine. That's good. But it doesn't go nearly far enough to make drugs affordable for our people.
Right. Well, it's interesting to me that you describe it that way and that's the one that John Katko supports, because that's how I would describe him as a representative. He says the right thing, but doesn't do the right thing. And our voters deserve something better. So can you just, before you go, just tell the people of the 24th District why this race, why this election is so important, and why we want to make sure that no matter how they choose to engage in the election, they do engage. Why does this matter so much?
I think if you look at the record of the House that's run by Democrats and the Senate that's run by Republicans, and even if you don't look at the presidency, but you look at those two bodies, you see one body that has passed bill after bill after bill to make America better for middle class and for those who are struggling. Just look at the record.
Mhm.
What's the one bill that the Republicans could all agree on? Cutting taxes for the wealthiest in America.
Right.
What did those taxes what that taxes cut go for? Particularly for big corporations, largely buying back stock. What did buying back stock do? It made those who own stock wealthier.
Mhm.
Now, frankly, most of the people that own stock are not wealthy. Now, so a lot of people do have mutual funds in their retirement funds, but that wasn't about stock buybacks. In any event, I think that it is important for us to have in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, people who will stand up and say, this is not true.
Mhm.
Not vote for messages, but vote for real relief,
Mhm.
jobs that pay decent wages, an environment that will support their health and their lives,
Mhm.
a healthcare system that they can access and will be affordable to make sure they and their families stay healthy. And to ferret out corruption in the government of the United States, and very frankly, in the federal government, which we see so much of, and it's so disappointing, with a shameless ignoring of what otherwise, if Obama had been president of the United States and done the things that this president has done, he would have been impeached.
Mhm.
He would have been impeached. So it's important to have people like you, Dana, who share the values of your people, who share the values of the average working men and women of this country,
Mhm.
who want an agenda that is for the people, not for the rich, not for the special interest, not for the fat cats, but want a government that the average working person who, their sweat and tears go into supporting themselves and their family, both parents working, they need childcare. We're fighting about childcare.
Mhm.
Childcare in America is about to implode.
Mhm.
We don't give it some help. That's one of the things we're negotiating about in the HEROES bill.
Mhm.
So, Dana, I think it's so important because I know you, I know your values, I know what you support, and it is a for the people agenda that will make a positive difference in the lives of Americans. Not just send them a message, we care about you.
Right.
Not just send them a message, oh, well, yeah, we think the drug prices ought to come down, but to make them come down. And to make sure that we say that, look, climate change is not a joke. It's not, and tell them COVID-19 is not a hoax.
Right.
So that's why I think your district has an opportunity to send somebody to the Congress of the United States who's going to serve them and their families.
Thank you so much. And I cannot wait to get there and roll up my sleeves and get to work side by side with you to make those things a reality for people all across Central and Western New York. And I want to thank you for taking time. I know you are incredibly busy to talk to the people who live here and to answer their questions. I am a huge proponent of opening government to participation by the people. And I am very grateful that you've given time to our voters tonight. So thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you in DC.
Glad to do it. This election is about America, not about any one of us individually. It's about us as a country. One nation, indivisible. We need to bring this country together. We need to care about all Americans, not the left, not the right, all Americans. Dana, you're going to do that, and you're going to be elected. Thank you.
Thank you.